What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about Steve Kerr for a second, right? And look, when you look at his accomplishments as a head coach, I believe he has a win percentage well over 60% for his career. 4 NBA championships as a head coach. Of course, 5 as an NBA player. And I believe Steve Kerr's association with championship teams is what elevates him in people's minds, when they call him a first ballot Hall of Famer. Because in reality, as a basketball player, Steve Kerr was a marginal talent who, prior to 1994 or 93, prior to 1993 definitely, was barely hanging on to the NBA. Now, I'm aware of Steve Kerr's past. I know the trials and tribulations of his life, the tragic way in which he lost his father, which had some similar overtones to how Michael Jordan lost his father. And I like Steve Kerr as a player, and I generally like him as what I've seen from afar, at least. I like him as a person. But the truth has to be told about Steve Kerr's coaching prowess. He's going to be one of these coaches who have had the fortune to come along at the very right time. Okay? I know a lot of people don't like to hear me say this, but I still believe that the architect of the Golden State Warriors was Mark Jackson. Okay? Some people like to push back on that. Yes, the way that Mark Jackson had them playing was a lot different. In many ways, Steve Kerr and the coaching staff made some definite adjustments to make them a better team. But I still believe that Mark Jackson was still the coach and wasn't removed because he said some things that politically and socially were out of step with what the modern NBA culture and climate wants. I still think that Mark Jackson would have made those ultimate adjustments. And we were talking about Mark Jackson as the first ballot Hall of Fame coach. At the end of the day, Steve Kerr cannot make adjustments to save his life. See, when he had an overpowered team for much of the 2000 teens and for a little bit in the 2020s, right? When he had a team that was great enough and good enough to mask his limitations as a head coach, then these things weren't as noticeable. But now we see the flaws. We see Steve Kerr, a supposed all-time a Hall of Fame head coach, consistently get out-coached during the playoffs. We see how Steph Curry and when he was there, at least Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson when he was there and whoever, they have to consistently, especially Steph Curry, consistently carry a team on their backs and produce these superhuman performances. And oftentimes to override what Steve Kerr is not doing out there on the court. I mean, at this point, why on earth are you still playing small ball when you don't have the personnel to implement this strategy? He does these things, and it's never really called out by the media. He was doing these things this past year. The fact that you've had multiple players who Steve Kerr have not been able to develop or help to develop as a head coach because he is so limited as far as how he wants to play teams and who he wants to develop. He had these problems with Wiseman, right? Then, of course, you lack the ability to control a player on your team and Draymond Green. From what I can tell, you're scared of the guy. Steve, look, Chuck Daly, Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, they would have never allowed what Draymond Green has done to happen under their watch. Never. The man has cost Steve Kerr a minimum of 2 championships. Draymond Green. 2 championships. Then you keep having these players who, you know what I'm saying, for whatever reason, you won't play because you're limited in how you know what I'm saying, as a head coach, you're limited in how you can strategize. Steve Kerr cannot, for the life of him, build a team around a big man. He can't do it. And the Golden State Warriors, because he lacks this ability to develop front court talent, they keep losing these players. And the disrespect that he shows these guys. First, it was, what was it? Robert Wiseman, right? You lost him. Then, you know, the whole fiasco with Draymond Green and Jordan Poole, excuse me. You know what I'm saying? Now, Poole was wasting away in Washington. I wouldn't be surprised now that he's in New Orleans with an actual team around him. Watch how he has a bounce back year, probably averaging around 23, 24 points a night, right? Then we saw the bullshit that happened between him and Kuminga. And now you just lost a fan favorite. You just lost a fan favorite in Kevon Looney, right? Kevon Looney had been with that team for what, 7, 8 years? And he talked about how recently he was hurt mentally and emotionally because Steve Kerr lacked confidence in him going up against, of all people, Steven Adams. I've seen Kevon Looney have stretches during these championship runs where he's mimicking goddamn Nate Thurman, going out there, putting up 16 points, putting up 18, 19 rebounds, playing excellent A-plus level defense. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but Kevon Looney has stretches where for 3 or 4, well, for 1 or 2 games, or out of a playoff series, 2 or 3, 1 or 2 games at least, he was the most impactful player on the floor on both sides of the ball. And now you let him walk. Now the Golden State Warriors' future looks like shit because Steve Kerr was unable to cultivate young talent under his regime. You already have to have ready-made, cultivated talent to come and help him win. Say what you want to say about Chuck Daly, but Chuck Daly helped to develop Dennis Rodman. Red Auerbach, when he was the head coach of the Boston Celtics, they developed a John Havlicek. Havlicek didn't have any offensive game when he started. Havlicek had a series teaching X's and O's back in the day. Y'all remember that? Even Phil Jackson helped. I'm not going to say he was the greatest X's and O's guy. I mean, he was a great X's and O's guy, but you know what I mean? Even under Phil Jackson, Ron Harper was able to reinvent himself. You get what I'm saying? Like, Steve Kerr couldn't do that. And that's why I refuse to put that motherfucker as a top 10 or 15 all-time head coach. I won't do it. I'd rather go back 100 years and put John Cundler, or I would go put, you know what I'm saying, Larry Bird's coach, Finch. I'd rather put Bill Fitch, excuse me. I'd rather put Bill Fitch in there. I don't care about winning percentage because sometimes it's not all about winning percentage because sometimes a coach challenges himself and try to turn around bad teams. But the media won't call Steve Kerr out. They won't because he got 4 championships, right? Because he got 4 championships. Doc Rivers has a championship. People aren't afraid to call him out. But you know how that goes.